He didn't expect a child to stop him in the middle of a Monday morning. The lobby was glass and steel, and the kind of polished marble that makes your footsteps sound like you belong. Executives drifted through like dark suits on rails. Security scanned badges with the polite nods of people who know how to move a crowd without ever raising their voice, and the wall-sized ticker scrolled numbers that told a certain story about power. That's the thing about lobbies like this. Everything is designed to whisper, "You're in the right place if you've already made it." And then she stood there small, 7, with a backpack that looked like it had lived a much harder life than she had. She had a letter clutched to her chest the way kids hold on to the last piece of something they love. You could see the smudged edges where the paper had soaked up tears or rain or both. She didn't block the door. She blocked the man. "Are you Mr. Anderson?" Her voice was calm. Not cute, not shy. Just clear. People stopped without meaning to. It's amazing how fast we recognize a moment that doesn't fit the script. The head of security took one step forward, then another, scanning for a parent, a camera, a trap. Someone from PR was already calculating what this would look like if it made its way to a social clip and which talking points they could deploy within the hour. An executive assistant held her breath because instincts tell you when something's about to change, and instinct had been screaming since the child appeared at the revolving doors. Michael Anderson, the Michael Anderson, glanced at the letter, then at the girl, then at the sea of faces pretending not to stare while very much staring. CEOs learn to read rooms the way firefighters learn to read smoke. He could feel it. Tension, curiosity, a hint of contempt from the people who never liked him, and a sharp edge of eagerness from the ones who did for entertainment, if not for empathy. "I'm Michael," he said, keeping his voice even. "Where are your parents?" "My mom wrote you this," she replied. "She said to put it in your hand, not the front desk, not a mailbox. Your hand." Security was closer now. The head guard wore the look of a man who'd seen a dozen versions of Unexpected Guest, and still never this one. "Sir, we can take it for you." "No." The girl hugged the letter tighter. "Please." For a half-second, you could almost see two versions of Michael Anderson pulling in opposite directions. The public one, built to move time forward in 15-minute blocks, to shave seconds off elevators and add basis points to margins, wanted to nod to security, keep walking, solve a potential PR headache with a small statement about compassion and safety, and policies that surely serve us all. The private one, the version he didn't show often, the one with unfixed things that waited for him in the dark, heard a tone in a little girl's voice that bypassed protocols and landed somewhere more human. He held out his hand. She placed the letter there fast. Like if she waited too long, the adults would take it away. Her fingers were cold. Or maybe his palm was just too warm from the coffee he hadn't yet finished. Either way, touch is honest in a way words rarely are. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she said. "My mom is Anna." And, just like that, the air changed. Names matter. Not for the Googling or the background checks or the way we sort people into risk levels and calendar invites. Names matter because they carry histories. Some names, when spoken, turn rooms into mirrors. Michael felt something tighten behind his ribs, an old place where memory and regret kept boxes labeled later. He folded the letter in half, then in half again, before realizing that it was already folded, already worn, already carrying more miles than most memos would ever travel. "Come with me," he said. Security hesitated, then nodded once. Protocol could bend without breaking. The PR woman made a mental map of every camera in the lobby and texted 2 people at once. The assistant, the one who had learned the difference between interruption and interruption that really matters, canceled the next meeting without asking. They took the side corridor, the one lined with awards that looked like weapons and photographs that looked like proof. "We were here. We won this. We built that." Michael walked just ahead. Emily at his side, the assistant trailing half a step behind, watching everything because someone should. In the elevator, they didn't speak. There are silences that press on you. There are silences that pull you. The door to his office shut with the quiet totality that only soft, close hinges can achieve. The city spread beyond the glass like a math problem too big to finish. He motioned toward the small couch, set his coffee on the table, and looked for a box of tissues he kept for guests he didn't expect to cry. He found it anyway. "Do you want water?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "She said this would be hard for you," she replied, almost apologizing. He blinked. "Your mother said that? She knows people," Emily said, as if that explained everything. "She knows when things are hard because she's sick. And when you're sick, you can feel hard days before they get here." She wasn't performing. She wasn't pleading. She was reporting. The way children do when they haven't learned how to bend the truth into a shape that fits someone else's comfort. Michael Saturday. The letter was on the table between them, occupying the kind of space we reserve for objects that feel heavier than their weight. "May I read it?" he asked, absurdly formal. Permission matters, even when you already have the thing you're asking about. Maybe especially then. Emily nodded. "She said you might stop at the first paragraph. She said you do that, sometimes stop when you think you already know how the story ends." He almost smiled. Not because she was wrong, but because she was exactly right. He unfolded the letter carefully. The paper really had traveled creases within creases, a softened edge where the fold had been reopened too many times. The ink was blue. He noticed that the loops in the handwriting were decisive, not tentative, like someone who didn't have time to be precious. He could sense something else, too. A calm, the way you only see it in people who have been on the phone with bad news and decided to stand up anyway. Michael began to read. "Michael, if someone is reading this to you, I failed my first plan." He looked up, startled. Emily's gaze was steady. "I told her I could do it," Emily said. "And I did. I gave it to your hand." He looked down again. "I have debated for days whether to write this," the letter went on, "because people with power don't like surprises and sick women don't like begging. I'm trying to avoid both. There is one thing I think you need to hear from someone who has nothing to sell you. The story you tell yourself about what you owe the world is smaller than the one the world is asking you to live." He stopped reading. Outside the glass, a helicopter paused like punctuation. He had read thousands of letters, some flattering, some furious, some legal. But this, there are sentences that don't persuade you so much as pick you up, place you 6 inches to the left, and set you down in a world that looks different because now you do. He didn't want to be moved by a page. He also knew he already was. He cleared his throat, continued. "I know your world is efficient. It has to be, to move capital and contracts and the kind of deals that make strangers richer and employees anxious. I don't think you're a villain. Most villains don't sleep very well. I think you told the truth once, the kind with a cost, and then you learned you could survive by telling smaller truths with no cost at all." He glanced at Emily again. She hadn't moved, but somehow she was closer, maybe because in rooms like this, honesty shortens distance. "My daughter stood in your lobby today because I asked her to," the letter said, "because there are only a few things left I can do for her. And I wanted one of them to be this, to teach her that if you are going to speak to power, you do it without spectacle and without apology. She will inherit my courage. I need her to see how to use it." Michael didn't realize his hand had moved toward the tissue box until he saw it there, hovering, then retreating. He wasn't crying, not yet. But the line between not yet and now can vanish if you poke it. He turned the page, there were more, finding himself greedy for the next sentence and resentful that he needed any of them. "Let me be plain," the letter continued. "I am ill. The kind of ill that makes calendars heavy. This is not a request for a miracle. It is a request for a decision. Somewhere between the contracts your name is on and the suppliers you pretend not to know, Corners have been cut that are hurting people like me. You know this. You also know how to stop it. You have chosen timelines and optics over faces. I am asking you to choose differently, not because I am dying, but because you aren't." He exhaled, long, and felt the room tilt a degree or two. He thought of the boardroom down the hall where they talked about material risk and reputational harm and the clean language of quarterly narratives. He thought of an email from 2 months ago, flagged red, with the kind of subject line that tells you what it's really about without ever saying it. He thought of a meeting he rescheduled twice because it was going to be complicated, and he had learned to mistrust anything that took more than an hour to solve. Emily watched him not as a CEO but as a person who might understand instructions if they were kind enough and clear enough and arrived with enough love to make them undeniable. She had the stillness of someone who had been asked to be brave more than once. That kind of stillness doesn't come free. "How did you get past security?" he asked finally, not because it mattered, but because he needed a small question before he could carry a large answer. "She asked a friend to help us," Emily said. "He used to work here." He said the way into big buildings is the same as the way into big hearts. You find the person who still remembers why they came in the first place. He felt that more than he agreed with it. "Does your mother know me?" he asked, careful now, mapping the edges of a story that seemed to know exactly where it was going. "She knows the version of you that makes the decisions nobody sees," Emily said. "She says that's the real one." He looked down at the letter again, angry at it for being so simple, angry at himself for needing it to be complicated. "2 more things," the letter said. "First, if you're angry reading this, please understand. Anger is a sign you are close to something true. Don't run yet. Second, I am not asking you to save me. I am asking you to become someone you will be proud to be if you outlive all the people who ever loved you without being impressed." He stopped. The room had its own pulse now, and he could feel his own against it, out of sync. He remembered another letter years back that had sat on a kitchen table for 3 days while 2 people pretended not to read it. The memory wasn't sharp. It didn't need to be. Sorrow doesn't care about resolution. He turned the page again, slower. "If you decide to do nothing, please tell my daughter the truth," the letter said. "Tell her that you chose to protect a story about yourself over the people inside it. Children deserve clarity. But if you decide to do something, don't make it a press release. Make it a policy. Make it a phone call to the person who is scared to bring you the bad news because the last time they did, you sent it back with comments about timing. Make it cost you an afternoon you were going to spend feeling important." He exhaled, then inhaled again, the way people do when they realize they've been holding their breath for longer than a sentence. "Is she here?" he asked Emily, his voice softer. "Your mom?" "She's downstairs," Emily said. "Waiting in the car. She said I could do the hard part. She said your hard part is next." He stood, walked to the window because that's where people go when they don't know where to go. The city looked like order. Streets in lines, buildings in stacks, all the chaos hidden in neat geometries. He had built a career on the confidence that order could be imposed on chaos if you measured hard enough. He wasn't sure measuring would help him here. He turned back. "What do you need from me?" he asked, which sounded like a transaction but was not. Not now. Emily didn't hesitate. "She wants you to read all of it. Then she wants you to decide. Not for us, for the people you don't see, and for you." He nodded. Not because he agreed yet, but because rhythm matters when you're near the truth. He sat again and finished the page. "I have included the names of 2 suppliers and 1 regional manager who are not doing what they tell you they are doing," the letter said, practical now, like a grocery list written in the middle of a sermon. "I have included dates. I have included the hours I spent on hold. I have included the cost in a currency you don't track fear. I don't need an apology. I need to know you were willing to be interrupted." He scanned the names. He knew one. He had shaken his hand last quarter and described him, over dinner, as effective. He remembered the board member who nodded like they had found a rare species of manager, aggressive and cheap. Michael looked up. "Thank you for bringing this," he said to Emily, aware of how small the words sounded. Gratitude often feels small because we only say it out loud when we realize how much we owe. "She said you would," Emily replied. "She said you always start from 'thank you' when you mean 'I'm listening.'" He had never been more seen and more called out in one sentence. He forced a smile that didn't quite make it to his eyes. "Your mom is a good writer," he said. "She's a good mom," Emily corrected gently. "The writing is just how she helps people who don't want help know that they need it." He considered the next calendar block a growth review with language he could recite in his sleep. He considered the assistant in the outer office, her hands already rearranging a universe of commitments to clear space for something that didn't yet have a name. He considered the camera phones that surely captured a small girl handing a big man a letter in a big lobby, and the way those frames would be read by people who wanted to be angry, and people who wanted to be inspired, and people who just wanted to scroll. "Can I meet her?" he asked. Emily's face did a small thing, the kind of shift that only children and very honest adults can pull off a mix of relief and resolve. "She said you might ask that," Emily answered. "She said to tell you yes if you finish the last page." He looked down. There was a final paragraph, a short one. "Michael, if you meet me, please don't tell me you're sorry," it said. "I don't need you to share my sadness. I need you to share my courage. Decide something today that you will be proud of if no one ever knows you did it. If you do that, everything else will find its place." He folded the letter back along the seams it had learned. He stood again. "Let's go," he said. Down the elevator this time, the silence felt different. The assistant joined them without being asked, a quiet witness. In the lobby, security parted the air, employees pretended to be busy, and the PR woman took one look at Michael's face and put her phone away. Outside, the day was holding its breath, the way cities do when they understand that a story is walking around inside them. A car waited at the curb. Not the company kind, but the kind you take when someone says, "We'll be 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we get stuck." The door opened slowly. Anna looked up from the passenger seat with the expression of a person who has decided that hope is worth the risk of disappointment. She was thinner than the letter suggested. That happens. Words never tell you what illness takes from the face. "Michael," she said, as if greeting an old acquaintance she was glad to see even though the last time they met was never. "Anna," he replied, surprised that her name fit his mouth so easily. Emily stood between them, the bridge she had always been. She looked from one to the other, then stepped back, just enough to let the adults make a choice. "I read it," Michael said. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a promise. It was a statement of fact that carried 100 unspoken admissions. "Good," Anna answered. "Then we can start from the same page." He could have laughed at the line if it weren't so perfectly, devastatingly true. They stood there for a second longer than the city allows. A horn in the distance. A gull arguing with a trash can lid. Somewhere, a digital sign changed from "by" to "SELL" because algorithms have no patience for tenderness. In that pause, the story agreed to be a story. "Can we talk upstairs?" Michael asked. "I'll keep it short." "Short is fine," Anna said. "Clear is better." He nodded, stepping back to make space as if he could physically move the moment into a shape that felt respectful. Emily climbed out first, shouldering her backpack again because when you're 7, you keep your things close. Anna followed, steady but careful. The kind of careful that comes from negotiating with your own body. They walked back through the glass doors. This time, the lobby felt different. Not because the marble had changed, but because intention had. People watch intention the way animals watch the weather. You can feel it in your skin. In the elevator, Michael looked at Anna and realized the strangest thing. He wasn't terrified. Not of her, not of the letter, not even of the board meeting this would eventually become if he did what the letter was asking him to do. He was relieved. Because for the first time in a long time, the path in front of him didn't require being the smartest man in the room. It required being the bravest. He could work with that. When the doors opened, the assistant led them into the conference room next to his office instead of the office itself. Not a power move, a practical one. The conference room had a whiteboard, and sometimes truth needs a surface. He motioned for them to sit, then stayed standing for a beat, because the body speaks before the mouth does. He set the letter on the table between them. "Okay," he said. "Let's talk about what this really is." Anna smiled. Not with triumph, but with the kind of tired gratitude you have when someone finally says the name of the thing you've been carrying. "It's about the difference between policy and practice," she said, glancing at Emily, who was watching the whiteboard like it was a movie. "It's about how those differences turn into fear. And it's about whether you're willing to be interrupted." He took the cap off a marker, drew a line down the board. "Policy," he wrote on one side, "practice on the other." He underlined both words. "Show me," he said. Anna did. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Michael Anderson listened like the outcome mattered more than his comfort, like the point of the meeting was not to protect the company from the truth, but to protect the people the company was built for. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't even a debate. It was a map unfolding, and every street had a name he had chosen not to learn until now. He didn't know where they would end up yet. But he knew how they would travel. Without spectacle and without apology. The way a little girl had walked into a lobby and asked a man to hold a letter as if it were a compass. And in that room, with a marker uncapped and a page still warm from being held, he found something he had been missing for a long time, a reason big enough to change. He drew boxes like he was diagramming a rescue, not a company. Under policy, Michael wrote the phrases he'd seen 1,000 times. Supplier Code of Conduct, quarterly audits, whistleblower hotline, on-time payment targets, health and safety compliance. Under practice. Anna named what actually happened. The subcontractor, 2 layers down, who diluted cleaning solutions to hit unit costs. The regional manager who quietly shortened rest breaks during peak season. The audit team that emailed schedules 2 weeks in advance, giving everyone time to hide the problems. The hotline that routed to a vendor who summarized stories into phrase lengths that fit dashboards. The on-time payments that meant 72 days when the contract said 30. He asked for dates. She had them. He asked for names. She had those too. Not all. Enough. Emily watched the words collect on the board, the way constellations collect in a night sky. The longer you look, the more you see the shape. "Start where it hurts people first," Anna said. "Then work backward to the paperwork." He looked at the board, at the neat order where mess had lived. "Okay," he said. "Safety, then payment, then the audit theater." She nodded. "And the fear," she added. "The fear is the glue. If you don't address that, everything slides back." He capped the marker. For a second, his hand trembled, not with panic, but with the adrenaline that comes when you admit the scale of what you're about to do. He had navigated hostile takeovers and regulatory storms and lawsuits that could have eaten entire calendars. This felt simpler and harder. Simpler because the truth was plain, harder because the truth would cost him. He turned to his assistant. "I need compliance, operations, and legal in here in 30 minutes, he said. "No slides, no notes, just them." She nodded, already moving. "And, sir? Yes? Should I clear your afternoon? And, hand sign." So Hander had 9. He looked at Anna, then at Emily. "Clear the week," he said. "We'll let the week tell us what it needs." When the door closed, the room was quiet in the good way. The kind of quiet you get after you land the plane, not before. "Before they get here," Michael said, "I want to understand something that isn't on the board." He looked at Anna's hands, then at her face. How are you, today? She smiled, not thin, not brave, just honest. I am tired in ways that don't improve with sleep, she said. But I am here. And I am not afraid of you. He almost laughed. That makes one of us, he said. And the joke did what jokes do when they're not armor. It opened a small door. Emily swung her legs like a metronome, steady. Can I draw? She asked, eyeing the corner of the whiteboard. Of course, Michael said, genuinely relieved. He handed her a marker. She drew 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one medium, one small, and above them, not a sun, but a heart with lines like rays. It was a child's diagram for courage. Good chart, he told her. Better than yours, she said, not unkindly. He accepted the correction. The first to arrive was the head of compliance, a woman whose resume read like a ladder runged with seriousness. She carried a notebook and a pen, and the kind of posture that says, I'm ready to be the adult in the room. Operations followed broad-shouldered, brisk, calculating lead times in his head even as he walked. Legal came in last, eyes already scanning, anticipating the shape of liability. No one expected to find a child drawing on the whiteboard. Michael gestured to chairs. Thank you for coming on short notice, he began. I'm changing how we're going to do this conversation. We're not starting from risk mitigation. We're starting from harm. He nodded toward the board. Policy versus practice, he said. We're going to close the gap. Compliance leaned forward, polite, skeptical. We have a strong program, she said. Our audit scores are rehearsed. Michael cut in, not unkind but without flinching. He pointed to the list under practice. We have good words. We don't have good habits. Operations bristled. If there are specific instances, we'll address them, he said. But we can't generalize systemic failure from... Anna spoke for the first time to them, not to Michael. When someone tells you about harm, she said, you have 2 instincts: solve the instance or defend the system. Both are useful. Neither is sufficient if you can't feel the fear underneath. Legal opened his mouth, then closed it. He used to be a public defender. He knew the sound of truth, spoken gently enough to be hard to argue with. Michael paced once, a slow line behind the chairs. He didn't perform this way often. Today, it wasn't a performance. We're changing 4 things, he said. Today, compliance's pen hovered. First, Michael continued, surprise audits are actually going to be surprise. Effective immediately, audits will be without notice. Where advance notice is legally required, the notice window will be as small as allowed by law. No schedules, no checklists emailed weeks in advance. Audit teams will report to compliance with a dotted line to me. I want the first set of visits happening by end of week. Compliance nodded, slowly. That reduces prep. It will increase failure rates initially, she said. It will increase honesty, Michael replied. We can fix failure. We can't fix performance that exists only while we're watching. Second, he said, uncapping a fresh marker, supplier payments. If the contract says net 30, we pay on time. Every time. Operations. You'll work with finance to sweep for every supplier paid over net terms in the last 6 months, with interest calculated on the days late. We'll make them whole, and we'll publish the new SLA internally because people treat payments the way leaders treat commitments. Operations exhaled. That's millions, he said, not as resistance, but as a fact. It's cost we owe, Michael said, and it's a message that will travel faster than any memo. He wrote, pay people on time on the board. Emily added a check mark next to it, very official. Third, Michael continued, the hotline. It's not a dashboard, it's a lifeline. We're replacing the vendor. Legal, draft an RFP for a service that routes directly to an internal cross-functional team trained to triage and escalate. No summaries that turn stories into bullet points. We'll measure responsiveness and resolution time, not just volume, and we'll put a human name at the bottom of every follow-up. Legal nodded. There are vendors who can do that, he said, but they will be more expensive. Said. Had. Cheap fear is the most expensive line item on a profit and loss, Anna said softly. No one argued. And fourth, Michael said, the part you'll hate. We're reopening 3 closed investigations from Q2. The supplier in Harbor Ridge, the packaging subcontractor in Del Sol, and the regional management question in North Point. Compliance stiffened. Those are resolved, she said carefully. They're closed, Michael corrected. Not resolved. He gestured toward the letter on the table. We have new information. Operations glanced at Anna. He didn't know her. He knew her type, he thought. Then he realized he didn't. Types are what you use when you want to move past the particular too quickly. Any other immediate actions? Michael asked, looking around the table like he was looking for excuses and hoping not to find any. Communications, Legal said. We need to tell the board, and employees. And probably the street. No press, Anna said, without malice. Not yet. If you speak too soon, you'll create a story you have to live up to instead of the work you intend to actually do. Give the work a head start. Michael nodded. We'll brief the board and our people, he said. External can wait until we have actions, not adjectives. Compliance tapped her pen. We'll need names, she said to Anna, each word measured. Not feelings, not rumors. And he so. Anna pushed a thin folder across the table. Dates, names, copies of emails with sensitive parts redacted. And 3 phone logs. She said, You'll find enough for a start. I'm not your only data point. But I'm not zero. Emily drew another check mark. Operations cleared his throat. What about timing? He asked. We can do the sweep, but you're talking about a full-court press. You'll blow up calendars from here to the coast. You have earnings in 3 weeks. Michael didn't look at him when he answered. He looked at the letter. If we need an earnings narrative, he said, we'll try honesty. Legal blinked. That's novel, he said, dryly enough to be funny, respectful enough to be true. The meeting ran 90 minutes. Not because there weren't more things to say, but because when conversations cross the line into courageous, they get efficient. People know what matters. People stop showing off. When they left, the room felt heavier, then lighter, the way you feel after carrying something upstairs and setting it down where it belongs. The assistant slipped in, reading the air the way sailors read wind. I moved your growth review, she said, and the investor lunch, and the call with the magazine. They can all wait. I also booked a car to Harbor Ridge tomorrow morning. Michael nodded. Thank you, he said. And could you find me a moment to call Daniel, who had Den experience? She knew the name from a different chapter of his life. She also knew what a call to Daniel meant. I'll make time, she said. Now or after you see the board? Now, he said, surprising himself. She handed him his phone and left. He stared at the screen for a second, thumb hovering. Daniel picked up on the second ring. You don't call during daylight, Daniel said, not unkind. I should have, for a long time, Michael admitted. I have been making myself harder to find. Silence. Then, you said it, not me. I need you to hear something before you read about it, Michael said, conscious of how fast news travels and how slowly trust is rebuilt. He summarized, the way men do when they are trying not to sound like they want applause. He failed a little. Not because he sought credit, but because old habits beg for the comfort of being seen as a good man. Daniel let him talk. When he finished, Daniel said, Do it without the dopamine. Michael laughed, one short burst that tasted like humility. I will try, he said. And if you need a place to land when your board reminds you who they think you work for, Daniel added. You know where my couch is. I know, Michael said, and the backyard in his memory, the one with bad chairs and good conversations, felt closer than the city outside his window. He hung up, then looked at Anna. Harbor Ridge, he said. Tomorrow, will you come? She shook her head. You don't need me to see it, she said. You need to go as yourself. He nodded. Emily? Emily frowned in the thoughtful way of people who are paying attention. I have school, she said, but I can help you practice what to say. He smiled. Deal. They spent 10 minutes on words that don't read like words when you say them to people who have been waiting to be believed. Not a script. A posture. I don't know, instead of let me explain. Show me instead of we did a study. I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner, instead of if mistakes were made. They practiced the difference between promising an outcome and promising a process. You have a CEO voice, Emily observed. Use your human one. He tried both and realized she was right. People can tell when voice becomes uniform. He brought the board in that afternoon, not all of them, but the chairs who govern the tone. They came armed with obligations and the kind of questions that sound like they're about fiduciary duty but are really about narrative risk. What's the exposure? One asked. Financially, a few million. Reputationally, unknown. Morally, we're long overdue and the interest rate is not in our favor, Michael replied, choosing a metaphor they would respect. What triggered this? Another pressed. A letter, he said simply. From someone who decided to interrupt me. You're sure this isn't a stunt? A third ventured, thinking of activists and sting operations and the way CEOs are trained to mistrust anything that looks like a setup. I am sure this is an invitation, Michael said. If I decline, I will be exactly the leader I've taught myself to be. If I accept, I might be the leader I want us to have. Silence, then, the kind that means you've said something true enough to make the next person choose their words carefully. We'll support you, the chair finally said. But you'll own it if it goes sideways, he said. I'll own it if it goes right, he replied. That's the point. That night, the building slept the way buildings do, lights on in the wrong places, cleaners moving like quiet weather. Michael stayed. Not for the grind. For the pages. He read the letter again, slower, then wrote a shorter one to himself on a yellow legal pad. Decide something today you'll be proud of if no one knows. He taped it inside his desk drawer, where he would see it every morning and every time he reached for a pen. At home, in an apartment that looked expensive and felt temporary, he didn't turn on the television. He opened a window. He let city air in, the kind that smells like ambition and takeout and last chances. Morning came like it always does, too bright for some, too soon for others. He dressed without thinking about it, which was its own decision. No performance armor, just a suit that fit. On the back seat of the car, he read the briefing compliance had prepared overnight for Harbor Ridge. It was competent, thorough, and missing the thing only seeing can give you. Harbor Ridge wasn't pretty. It wasn't ugly, either. It was one of those industrial parks built on the edges of cities where the roads forget their names and pick up numbers. The building was cinder block and corrugated metal, with a strip of grass trying not to die. Trucks idled. A forklift beeped in the background like a metronome set to urgent. He asked the manager to walk him through. The man wore the uniform of 1,000 Sights high-vis vest, name Patch, eyes that measured people by whether they slowed him down. He recognized Michael from a town hall video and had thought it was a joke when the office said the boss was coming. It isn't, he thought, watching the car, watching the suits, watching the woman from compliance who looked like she meant business, and the guy from legal who looked like he had eaten policy for breakfast. We keep it tight, the manager said, patter ready. We hit our numbers. Audits have been solid. No prep, Michaels said, not to catch him out, but to set the tone. Show me today. They walked. The line moved fast. Too fast, maybe. He saw the places where speed shaved a second from each unit, and asked himself what it had shaved from the people too. He saw a break room that wasn't a room so much as a corner with a microwave. He saw time clocks set to round down. He saw the posted schedule and the unposted one, the one in the manager's head that stretched shifts when orders stacked up. He asked to see the cleaning supplies. The supervisor hesitated, then obeyed. He checked the labels. He wasn't a chemist. He knew enough to ask, "What's the dilution ratio?" The supervisor answered too quickly. Compliance wrote it down. They tested one container, then another. One was fine. One wasn't. He asked 3 workers where the hotline number was. 2 pointed to a poster in the hall. 1 didn't know. He asked if they'd ever used it. 2 said no. 1 laughed. "I like my job," the man said. It wasn't a joke. "What would make you feel safe telling the truth?" Michael asked. The man looked down, then up. "Knowing somebody would do something," he said, "and that I wouldn't be the only one who paid for it." He held the man's gaze long enough for the conversation to land. Outside, by the loading dock, a woman leaned against a stack of pallets and watched. You learn to tell which watchers are waiting to pounce and which are waiting for permission. She was the latter. He walked over. "I'm Michael," he said, withholding the last name because it wasn't useful right now. "I know," she said, not deferential, not hostile. "I'm Raina. What would you change if you could change one thing by noon?" he asked. She thought for 2 seconds. "Pay us on time," she said. "The rest gets easier if the rent gets paid before we're late." "By noon is ambitious," he said. "But the next check?" "On time. Then we fix the rest." She nodded. "I'll believe it when I see it," she said. It was not disrespect. It was experience. "Fair," he said. "Then I'll let you see it." Back in the office space that pretended to be a conference room, he gathered the manager, the floor supervisors, compliance, and legal. He kept it short. "We found what we expected to find," he said, "and some of what we hoped not to. We're going to fix it. You'll have support. You'll also have accountability." He glanced at the manager. "You'll have to choose which you prefer." The manager's jaw worked. He had spent years being rewarded for numbers and left alone about means. He recognized, in a single sentence, a change in currency. He was smart enough to know he had a decision to make. "I can do it," he said finally. It was not contrition. It was a bet on himself in a game with new rules. On the drive back, Michael didn't talk. He looked. The city passed by with all its undramatic miracles. People carrying food. A woman arguing into her phone and smiling anyway. A kid with a backpack too big for his shoulders running to make the bus. Ordinary courage everywhere, hiding in plain sight. He stopped at a hospital. He didn't go in with cameras or gifts. He went in like most of us do when life interrupts quietly, not sure where to put his hands. He asked for the oncology wing not because he was trying to prove a point, but because he was walking toward the place where fear and hope live next door to each other. He didn't find Anna. He didn't expect to. He found a waiting room with chairs designed to look comfortable for 20 minutes and brutal after an hour. He took a seat. He watched people write their names on forms. He watched a nurse kneel to speak to a child at eye level like time could slow if you respected it enough. He left without talking to anyone, the way you leave a church you didn't know you needed. Back at the office, the consequences had not waited for him. They never do. The PR lead had 3 draft statements ranging from, "We're listening," to "We're committed." He didn't read them. Not yet. The board chair had questions about scope. He answered them. The operations team had a plan for the payment sweep. He approved it. An internal email from a mid-level manager in North Point hovered in his inbox, subject line, Your visit. He clicked. It was short. If you're serious, here's what you're missing, it began, and then laid out 4 bullets you could only write if you had been scared to write them for a long time. He replied, I am. Thank you. I'll be there Thursday. He drafted his message to the company himself. He rejected the voice in his head that writes for the street and used the one Emily had told him to use. Team. Today, I was interrupted. I'm grateful for it. We're going to close the gap between what we say and what we do. That means surprise audits that are actually surprises, paying on time because we said we would, a hotline answered by humans who can act, and reopening 3 investigations we closed too quickly. If you've been waiting for permission to tell me where we're wrong, consider this your invitation. If you've been waiting for me to say I will protect you when you tell the truth, consider this my promise. If you're worried about what this means for our numbers this quarter, so am I. Let's be the kind of people who worry about the right things in the right order. I will make mistakes as we do this. Hold me accountable, not for never being wrong, but for never refusing to learn. M. He sent it before he could lawyer it into a safer shape. Then he closed his laptop and went downstairs. The lobby felt different again, not because the marble had changed, but because he had. Security gave him a nod that contained a complicated respect. The PR woman didn't follow him. She didn't need to. The assistant fell in step because she had learned the rhythm. Emily was waiting by the revolving door, like she had always been part of the architecture. He had texted a question. Anna had answered, Yes, she can come by after school. Did you practice? Emily asked, as if she were coaching him for a school play. I did, he said. And I did it without a teleprompter. She considered this. Good, she said. Prompters make you sound like you're not ready to be surprised. They took the side corridor to avoid the cameras that live in lobbies even when you can't see them. In the elevator, he asked, How is she today? Tired, Emily said. But she likes when I tell her what you did. What did I do? He asked, half afraid of his own answer. You listened, Emily said. And you didn't ask for a photo. He almost laughed, and then didn't, because kids don't make the jokes we make when we want to hide from truth. In his office, he showed her the email he'd sent to the company. She read it out loud, lips moving silently like kids do when they're making sure they don't miss any words that matter. When she finished, she nodded. It sounds like you, she said. Not like the we that adults use when they're afraid to say I. He heard himself begin to apologize to explain all the ways we protects I in corporate contexts and stopped. Thank you, he said instead. She pulled her backpack into her lap. From it, she took a small notebook covered in stickers that had lost their stick. She flipped to a page with a list. Mom says when people really change, they write it down, she said. So I made a list for you. He read over her shoulder. Pay on time. Surprise audits. Human hotline. Reopen cases. Say sorry without the word if. Visit the places, not just the reports. Find the person who's afraid to tell you the truth and protect them. Ask the question you hope nobody asks you. Do one thing quietly. What's the last one? He asked, pointing. She shrugged. She says the last one always changes, Emily said. It's the one only you can write. Infected was Corland Resters of line. He looked at the empty final line and felt something like permission. What do you want it to be? Emily asked. He thought of Daniel's couch. He thought of Harbor Ridge. He thought of the manager who had taken a breath and said, I can do it. And the worker who had said, I like my job, meaning, please don't make telling the truth cost me everything. Okay? He said. I'll write it now. He took a pen and, in the messy print of a man who types more than he writes, added, Make one decision today that costs me comfort, not someone else's rent. Emily read it, nodded once. Good last one, she said. The next morning began with an email he couldn't have written a week ago. To the supplier in Del Sol, we're out of compliance with our own standards at your site. We own that. If not, we will end the contract and help transition your people so they're not punished for our timeline. Call me directly." He included his number. He felt legal's future headache and sent it anyway. Then he walked to the small conference room where compliance had set up a war room that wasn't war so much as medicine. Whiteboards with lists, dashboards replaced with names, a column titled "Who's Afraid?" with empty boxes waiting for someone to be brave enough to put a person there, not a metric. The first call came from North Point, a woman named Suri who spoke in careful sentences, like each one had to cross a river. She had reported a safety shortcut 3 times and received 3 tickets back. "Thank you for your input." She had stopped reporting after that because silence sometimes hurts less than being ignored while shouting. Michael listened, asked, "What would have told you we were serious the first time?" She said, "Someone with power had called me, not to ask me to repeat myself, but to tell me what they were going to do." He looked at the board column titled "Who Calls?" and wrote his own initials next to her name. The room did a small shift, the kind you feel in your chest when hierarchy steps in the right direction. By noon, the sweep of overdue payments was a map of obligation. Finance did the math. It was larger than the number operations had guessed. It was still smaller than the cost of cynicism. Michael authorized the transfers, then wrote a note to accompany each one that said, "We didn't keep our word. We will." He expected outrage from someone. It didn't come. Something else did. A quiet stream of emails from suppliers who had been building contingency plans around a powerful company's unreliability and now had room to breathe. Gratitude doesn't trend. It compounds. In the afternoon, he walked into legal with a question that sounded like trouble. "How do we protect people who speak up when their managers don't want to hear it?" he asked. "Not with posters, with rules." Legal reached to a shelf, not a literal one, the shelf in his head where precedents live. "We can write a non-retaliation policy with teeth," he said. "Tie it to performance reviews. Make retaliation a terminable offense. Make silence expensive." "Do it," Michael said, "and write it so people understand it without a law degree." The day had a rhythm now. Not the rhythm of earnings calls and growth charts, but the rhythm of reform. Listen, decide, act, absorb, repeat. He was tired in a way that felt earned. He didn't see Anna again until late, when the office had gone quiet except for the hum that buildings make when they're thinking. She walked in, slower than yesterday, strength rationed like a precious thing. Emily carried a bag with snacks that looked like they'd been chosen for someone else and then shared because that's what kids do when they want to take care of you without saying it out loud. "How did you do?" Anna asked. "Better than yesterday," he said. "Worse than tomorrow." She smiled. "I'll accept that trend." He told her about Harbor Ridge. She didn't ask for proof. She asked for names. He told her the ones he could. She listened the way doctors listen to lab results, not for the drama, for the direction. "Will you be able to keep going when this stops being a story and starts being a slog?" she asked finally. He didn't hesitate. "Ask me again in a month," he said. "But I think so." She looked at him, weighing a new variable. "I used to teach yoga," she said, catching him off guard. "People think it's about flexibility. It's about breath. You can feel when a person holds their breath in a pose because they're trying to outweight the discomfort. Those are the ones who get hurt. The ones who exhale through the hard part get stronger." He thought of Harbor Ridge again, of the nurse kneeling to speak to a child, of the worker who laughed and said, "I like my job," of Suri's careful sentences. "I am learning to breathe," he said. "Good," she said, "because it's going to get louder before it gets quiet." She was right. The next morning, a blog that liked to catch CEOs with their own words ran a sidebar titled, "Is Anderson Panicking?" with a photo of him looking human in a place he usually looked polished. A columnist tweeted, "Nothing says we care like a surprise audit." An investor emailed the board chair, "Is there a plan to control this?" The board chair forwarded it with a terse, "Thoughts?" Michael wrote back, "We're controlling harm. The story will control itself when the facts change." Then he closed his email and went to North Point. He didn't announce himself. He didn't bring a camera. He asked for Suri. She came to the small office with the thin walls and looked at him like a miracle she didn't trust yet. He said, "Thank you." He said, "She did." He didn't lecture. He listened. At one point, he asked a question, and she said, "That's not the question." And he said, "Teach me the right one." And she did. They changed a process on the spot because it didn't need a committee. It needed courage. Back at headquarters, the hotline rang the way it should have rung for years. Calls didn't go into a spreadsheet. They went to people. It was messy. It was slower in the beginning. Because speaking the truth takes longer when you haven't done it in a while. In the gaps between calls and visits and policies, Michael found the small, quiet spaces where old habits try to creep back in. He found himself reaching for phrases like, "Let's not overreact," and "What's the precedent?" and "We'll revisit next quarter." He replaced them with, "What would you hope your daughter sees you do?" and "Who pays the cost of waiting?" He wrote those on sticky notes, not because he needed decoration, but because reminders are the scaffolding of new practice. He sent one note to his own mother, who didn't understand the markets and didn't pretend to. It said, "I'm trying to be who you raised." And she responded with a picture of the backyard he grew up in and a text, "You always were. Sometimes we get busy and forget. Love you." At night, he visited the hospital again. He still didn't find Anna those first few times. He didn't force it. He sat in the waiting room and listened to a man explain to his sister why he couldn't be there every day, and heard the love in the explanation, not the apology. He watched a woman in scrubs laugh at something on her phone and understood that joy keeps working even where fear lives. On the third night, he did find Anna. Or she found him. She took the seat next to him like they had agreed to meet. "You look tired," she said. "I am," he said. "But not the kind that sleep solves, the kind that meaning solves." She nodded. They sat in that practical silence that comes when companionship doesn't need small talk. "You know," she said after a while, "people will say you did this because of a letter." "I did," he said. "And because of everything that was true before the letter. It just took a letter to make me admit it." She looked at him, measuring that. "Good answer," she said. "Not for me. For you." They didn't say goodbye. They said, "See you," which is what you say when endings are not the useful thing to discuss. The next morning brought a meeting he had been anticipating since the elevator with Emily, the gathering of mid-levels who make companies run and can also make them stop. They came in wary of a new fad, wary of being asked to be brave and then left alone with the consequences, wary of a leader's epiphany that could become their extra work. He began with a sentence he had practiced until it felt undesigned. "You're not in trouble," he said. "But we are." That got their attention. "I've trained you to make your part look good even if the whole isn't," he continued. "That's on me. We're going to unlearn that. It will mean asking for help earlier, admitting failure faster, and not punishing the messenger. It will mean changing the way we reward people. If you can't be part of that, tell me now. I won't fire you for saying so. I will hold you to your choice." A man in the second row, the kind who has kept companies like this afloat for 20 years, lifted his hand. "What happens when the numbers dip while we do this?" he asked. "We tell the truth," Michael said. "We explain what we're doing and why. We accept the consequences. We stop assuming the market is allergic to morality, and, if some of it is, we find investors who aren't." His one. The man nodded, not convinced, but considering. Considering is the doorway to conviction. Afterward, a woman lingered. "My sister works at Del Sol," she said. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said. "Help me." She did. By the end of the week, the surprise audits had surprised exactly the people they needed to. 3 sites failed in predictable ways. One surprised Michael by passing with grace because the manager had quietly been doing the right thing without a memo and only needed permission to keep going. Michael wrote him a note. Not an award. A note. "I see you," it said. "Thank you. Keep teaching us." The manager sent a photo of the note taped above his desk. "I will," he wrote back. When the first round of on-time payments hit, Raina sent a single emoji, 2 hands pressed together, because sometimes gratitude is simpler than language. Suri forwarded a copy of a shift schedule that finally aligned with policy. The mid-level, who had emailed, "If you're serious," sent a second note. "I think you are." The board watched, some with pride, some with skepticism, all with the calculation that governs large ships near changing currents. The chair asked him to dinner, not to warn him off, to ask, "How far are you going to take this?" "As far as it takes me," he said. "And us." "You know that's not a plan," the chair said, smiling despite himself. "It's a decision," Michael said. "Plans can follow decisions. They're dumb without them." The chair raised his glass to that. "To dumb plans and good decisions," he said. Michael almost enjoyed the toast. Almost. He was learning to be careful with the part of himself that enjoys being seen doing the right thing. Not to kill it. To keep it honest. On Sunday, he didn't go to the office. He went to a park with a notebook and sat on a bench that had a plaque for a man someone loved. He wrote down everything he was afraid of. The first site closure, if we can't fix it. The first investor who punishes us for transparency. The first manager who retaliates and the second who learns from it. The first time we are tempted to make a video instead of a policy. The day this stops being urgent to me because I forget the sound of the lobby. At the bottom, he added, "The day Anna's letter doesn't sting as it heals." He closed the notebook and watched a little boy race a pigeon and lose graciously. He thought about Emily's list. He thought about the last line he had written. He wondered how many days he could keep choosing the harder, smaller, truer thing. He decided to make it at least one more. On Monday, he didn't wear a different suit. He wore the same posture. The work continued. More calls, more visits, more policies drafted in plain English, more money spent in the direction of honesty. He made mistakes. A meeting where he spoke too long and listened too short. An email he sent too fast. A moment when the old voice crept back and said, "Let's circle back next quarter." He caught himself. He wrote, "Now," in the margin. In the afternoon, a press request slipped through the gates he'd put up around narrative. "We'd like to profile your turnaround," the producer wrote. "People need hope." He stared at the phrase and felt the old hunger for a redemption arc. Then he replied, "Not yet. Let me earn your profile with a year of quiet decisions. If we're still doing this then, I'll talk." The producer sent back a line he liked. "We'll check in a year. Hold yourself to it." He would. That night, he stood in the lobby again, by the place where a small girl had looked up at him and made the building remember it had a heart. Security nodded. A janitor buffered a floor until it shone. He looked up at the ticker and watched numbers slide by like weather. He didn't dismiss them. He reframed them. "This is weather," he told himself. "I am building a climate." Behind him, the assistant cleared her throat. "She's here," she said. He turned. Emily walked in, carrying her backpack like a flag. Anna followed, steady, brave, a little more pale, her eyes no less bright. They didn't need an invitation. They had one. The kind you keep giving yourself until you don't need paper anymore. "Ready for part 2? Emily asked. "Always," he said. And they went upstairs. Not to write a press release, but to write the next line on a list where the last item is always waiting to be discovered by the person who has decided to be interrupted. The week that followed didn't break him. It tested the joints. You can tell what a system is made of by the sound it makes under stress. A healthy one creaks and settles and then holds. A brittle one snaps. Michael listened, not to the headlines, but to the floorboards of his company. On Tuesday, a regional director sent a smiling memo that said all the right things about values, with no actual changes attached, the kind of note that exists to inoculate, not to inform. Michael had written 3 of those in his career. He recognized the tone like a mirror he no longer wanted to look into. He picked up the phone. "Delete the memo," he said. "Send me your plan with dates, names, and one thing you will do this week that will cost you comfort. If you can't do that, tell me now, and I'll put someone next to you who can." Then, 79. There was a pause on the line, the pause of a man deciding who he wanted to be when someone finally asked, "I'll send it by 5, the director said. "No memo, a plan." "Good," Michael said. "Start with the night shift. They live with the consequences of day shift optics." He was learning to speak in specifics. Specifics are how you find the floor. Mid-morning, Legal walked in with a red folder he carried the way ER doctors carry the chart that changes a night. "North Point," he said. "Retaliation claim. Fresh. Credible." He didn't sit. He didn't need to. Suri's supervisor reassigned her to the worst rotation after your visit. He told someone at lunch that snitches get the late shift. "We have a witness." Old Michael would have said, "Investigate thoroughly." New Michael said, "Suspend the supervisor today. Pay Suri for last week at the best shift differential rate. Conduct the investigation with the assumption that we will fire him unless the facts convince us not to. Send me the draft notice before you deliver it." Legal raised an eyebrow. "That flips our burden," he said. "Fear flipped it years ago," Michael replied. "We're just catching up." He wrote a short note to Suri he asked the assistant to deliver by hand, not by HR email. "Suri, I told you we would protect you for telling the truth. That starts now. If anything changes that makes you feel unsafe, you call me directly. We'll keep your name confidential as the investigation proceeds. Thank you for your courage. M." He put his number on the bottom again. He was going to be impossible to insulate for a while. That's how you reteach a system what access means. At noon, the first payment sweep hit supplier accounts. Raina's single emoji came through again, then a second message. "I paid the rent today, on time." He didn't forward it to anyone. He stood up, walked to the whiteboard, and drew a small square next to "Pay on time." He filled it in. The room felt it. The failure came at 2:17 p.m. A photo surfaced on a local blog, one of those precincts of the internet where outrage finds its niche and breeds showing a Harbor Ridge worker walking across a pallet stack without a harness. The caption screamed, "After surprise visit, safety still a joke." The comments did what comments do. The PR lead hovered in his doorway with a question in her eyes that he had taught her to ask. "How do we message this?" "We don't," he said. "We fix it. Then we talk." He called Harbor Ridge. "Shut the line down," he told the manager. "Put every supervisor in a room, show them the photo, ask them to tell you every other shortcut they've seen this week. When they're done, ask the workers to add the ones the supervisors missed. Then call me back with a list and what you'll do by shift change." "Sir," the orders. The manager started. "We'll wait," Michael said. "Lives won't." 30 minutes later, the manager called back with 8 items that did not need a committee. Just courage. Restock harnesses, fix the broken ladder, retrain the new hires who'd been onboarded by osmosis, lock out the forklift during lunch, move the hotline poster to the break corner where people actually stand, schedule a joint walkthrough with the crew lead and the quiet guy everyone listens to when he decides to speak. It was basic. It was beautiful. "Good," Michael said. And you, what's going to keep you honest? The manager was quiet. Then, have compliance pick a day any day and ask 3 random workers what we changed since Tuesday. If they can't answer, you call me. Michael hung up and sat with the feeling of failure that hadn't ruined him. It had clarified him. He texted Anna. Found a hole. We're patching it without pretending it wasn't there. She replied with 3 words that felt like scaffolding. Keep going steady. That evening, he went to the investor Q&A he couldn't dodge without performing a smaller version of cowardice. The room was monochrome and expensive. The questions were sharp and framed as neutral, which is an art form. Are we looking at material impacts to margin from your initiative? One asked, the ellipsis doing more work than the word. Yes, he said. In the short term. In the long term, we're trading fragility for resilience. It doesn't show up cleanly in a quarter. It shows up cleanly in whether we exist with integrity 3 years from now. Is this a response to negative press? Another asked, trying to pull him into a familiar story of leaders playing defense. It's a response to the truth, he said. Press is weather. We're adjusting climate. A hand in the back, older, more patient. How will you measure whether this is working? He didn't say engagement or brand sentiment or any of the tidy metrics that make a story feel finished before the work is. He said, fewer anonymous tips, more named ones. Fewer surprise failures on audit, more straightforward ones we fix in public. Supplier DSO trending toward contract terms without 5 emails in between. A hotline volume that spikes, then settles to a level that tracks reality instead of theater. And this managers staying when we make retaliating expensive. Managers leaving when we make courage the unit of reward. Silence is a currency in rooms like that. He felt the value move a little. Afterward, a woman who ran a fund that had stuck with them through a bad year and 2 good ones came up and said, It takes a particular arrogance to think you can do this. I'm glad you have it. It feels less like arrogance and more like sobriety, he said. She laughed. That too, she said. I'll hold the street off your back for a minute. Make it count. He walked home, without the car, on purpose. Cities teach you whether your commitments hold when no one is watching. He passed a diner where the cook was scolding a teenager and handing him a milkshake at the same time. He passed a laundromat where a woman was folding someone else's shirts with care she could have saved. He passed a bus stop where a man in a suit was practicing a speech under his breath and saying "we" and "I" back and forth like he was trying them on to see which fit. He slept. Not long. Enough. Wednesday brought the first closure. Del Sol. Compliance's overnight audit report was short the way the truth can afford to be. Life safety violations that persist despite immediate remediation orders. Evidence of falsified training records. Supervisor threatening workers who speak to auditors. Recommend. Suspend operations pending corrective plan. Terminate subcontractor. Pay workers during suspension to avoid penalizing them for our failure. As a revered. Operations memo arrived 3 minutes later, freighted with numbers and the ghost of panic. Shutting Del Sol will blow the delivery window on the Arcadia rollout. We can shift volume to East Point and Harbor Ridge, but East Point is already tight and Harbor needs retraining time. Cost impact. High. Reputation impact. Depends on narrative. Michael called the chair. We're closing Del Sol for 2 weeks, he said. We will pay workers. We will terminate the subcontractor and help place their people with the next vendor. We'll ship late on Arcadia, or we'll tell them the truth and share the load. Can the company absorb it? The chair asked. Yes, Michael said. Can you? The chair asked, which was a different question. I'd rather absorb this than the cost of the accident we're now statistically avoiding, Michael said. And I'd rather stand up in front of my people with an example than with a slogan. Do it, the chair said, and get ahead of the internal narrative. External can wait. Michael drafted the note to Del Sol himself. He pictured the faces. He imagined the fear. He wrote with that fear in mind. Team Del Sol, we are pausing operations for 2 weeks due to safety violations and falsified training records. That's on leadership, not on you. You will be paid your average weekly hours during the pause. We are terminating the subcontractor responsible and will work with you to train and reopen safely. If you want to tell me something you haven't felt safe telling anyone, I will be on site tomorrow. You won't be punished for honesty. You have my word, Michael. He read it out loud to Emily over video before he sent it, because she had decided she was his voice check. She gave a thumbs up and said, "You didn't say we hope anywhere." Good. He booked a flight. The blowback came fast and loud. A board member who loved the phrase fiduciary duty sent a paragraph that might as well have been a siren. The head of sales wrote, "Arcadia is going to walk." A Slack thread populated with all the predictable framing. Overcorrection, optics, tone from the top, whiplash. Remember the business. He didn't fight the thread. He posted the audit photo of the falsified training record next to a schedule with the supervisor's name on it and wrote one line, "We remember the business by remembering the people who are the business." The thread quieted, not into agreement, into thought. At Del Sol the next day, he stood in a warehouse painted a color that had once been cheerful and had since faded into tired. People gathered with arms crossed, legs crossed, brows crossed. He didn't bring a podium. He brought the letter. He didn't read from it. He kept it in his pocket like a compass. "I shut this site down," he said. "That's on me. You will be paid while we fix it. Training will be real. Supervisors who retaliate will be gone. I will listen to anyone who wants to be heard. If you're angry, good. Anger is one way love defends what matters." A woman raised her hand. "We've heard versions of this before," she said. "Then people show up with clipboards and it all gets worse." "I know," he said. "Clipboards can be weapons. Today, they're bandages. Tomorrow, they're habits. If I fail at that, I expect you to remind me, loudly." A man in a baseball cap stepped forward. "My brother got written up last year for reporting a broken machine," he said. "Will you take that off his file?" "Yes," Michael said. "Today." "Then I'll believe the rest when it gets here," the man said, practical as rent. He spent the day walking the floor with compliance, not as an audit, as a confession. "We did this to you by pretending theater was truth." He ate in the break corner where the microwave sounded like an old car, and listened to 3 workers tell him how schedules actually get made. He met a supervisor who looked stricken and a supervisor who looked furious. He did not perform outrage. He performed accountability. On the way out, a teenager with a visitor badge hugged Emily in a way that said they had met on the internet where kids console each other out of sight. Emily introduced her as Liza. "Her mom works here," she said. "She wants to be an engineer." Michael shook her hand like it mattered because it did. "We could use you," he said. "When you're ready, come see me. I'll make sure you meet someone who builds things, not just slides." The teenager smiled the private smile of a person who's just been given a door. Back in the city, the press had found the story and was chewing it. CEO halts plant over safety lapses. One headline read, the word halts doing its best to make a pause sound like an apocalypse. "Values play or virtue play?" Another asked, clicking for blood. The producer who had promised to check back in a year sent a single word, "Watching." He turned off alerts again. Thursday evening, he took a detour past the hospital. He didn't go in. He left a small bouquet at the desk with a card the nurse promised to deliver. "I chose hard again today. I hope it buys us time worth having." He didn't sign his last name. He didn't need to. At home, a package waited a small brown envelope without a return address, like something a movie detective would open with gloves. He didn't need gloves. Inside, a photocopy of a page from an old internal audit at North Point, years back, with a handwritten note. "We flagged this then. We were told to soften the language. Don't let them soften you. No signature. Courage prefers quiet when it's learning to walk. He put the page under a magnet on his fridge where people usually put postcards from vacations. It felt like a better memory to keep. Friday morning brought the meeting he had been dreading and had to have. The sit-down with the 3 most numbers-forward executives, the ones who kept the gears grinding and who had learned to treat anything qualitative as a rounding error. He didn't want to convert them. He wanted to conscript them. "I need your help," he began, which was not how these meetings typically opened. "We're building something sturdier than the last story. Your skills are still central. I'm going to ask you to use them on different questions." "Such as?" the CFO asked, every inch of him balanced between skepticism and curiosity. "Such as, how do we measure the cost of fear?" Michael said. "What's the model for the value of not having to replace people who leave because they were punished for honesty? What's the premium we're willing to pay for suppliers who can pass a surprise audit without theater? How do we show investors that this is not softness, it's risk management at a higher resolution?" The COO leaned back. "You're asking us to price intangibles," she said. "We can do that. But the variance will be ugly. We live with ugly variance all the time," he said. "We just pretend it's precise when it aligns with the story we like." The CRO folded his arms. "What's the message to customers?" he asked. "They won't want to pay more." "Some won't," Michael said. "Some will. Some will leave and come back. Some will leave and tell everyone we're naive. We'll tell the truth about what we're building, and we'll stop assuming that the only niche that exists is the one optimized for short-term extraction." They stared at him like he had just moved a wall. He had. "Give me a quarter," the CFO said finally. "We'll build a dashboard that is not a lie. It will be messy. I'll defend it if you do." "I will," Michael said. And then there was the quiet fight, the one that happens inside a person when a story is tempted to go back to sleep. It came on Saturday, because Saturdays are when our brains try to collect themselves into familiar shapes. He woke to an emptiness that used to feel like peace and now felt like a warning. Don't drift. He texted Daniel. "Coffee?" Daniel sent back an address and a single word. Bench. It was the bench from before, the one with the plaque for a man someone loved. Daniel was already there, holding 2 cups like an offering and a dare. "How's the revolution?" Daniel asked, gently mocking the part of Michael that would always need a friend to deflate it. "It's a renovation," Michael said. "Revolution is too proud." Daniel nodded. "Renovations get moldy if you don't open the walls," he said. "You opening the walls?" "I closed a site," Michael said. "I paid people to stay home. I told investors the truth. I started counting fear as a cost." Daniel whistled, low. "That's a lot of walls," he said. "You okay?" "I don't know," Michael admitted. "I think I'm right-sized." Saturday. The park offered its weekend inventory. Dogs living their best life. A runner who looked like he was being chased by a ghost he couldn't shake. A kid learning to ride a bike with a parent running behind wearing hope on their face. "Anna?" Daniel asked. "Fighting," Michael said, "like it's her niche to teach us how." Daniel smiled at the word appearing where it didn't belong and somehow did. "When are you going to let people help you carry this?" he asked. "You can be the reason. You can't be the method." Michael considered. "I told my people to hold me accountable," he said. "I need to let them." "Start with one," Daniel said. "Pick the person who scares you most because they see through you and give them your blind spot." He knew exactly who that was. Not legal, not compliance, the assistant. She had a way of looking at him like she remembered who he was on days he tried to forget. On Monday, he pulled her into the small conference room, the one that had become a chapel for decisions. "I need you to be the keeper of the list," he said. "The list?" she asked. "The one Emily made for me," he said. "Updated by reality. I want you to tell me when I drift. I'll give you permission now so you don't have to ask for it later." She didn't smile. She didn't perform gratitude. She said, "Okay," in the tone people use when they accept the responsibility to tug on your sleeve in public if you start to perform instead of lead. "And I need you to promise you won't shoot the messenger." "I'll sign it in blood," he said. "Ink is fine," she said. "Bloodstains." They both laughed. Then she asked a question no one else had dared. "What happens when Anna dies?" He felt the floor tilt. He thought of the letter. He thought of the lobby. He thought of the way Emily held a page like it was a rope. He thought of the renovation he had called a renovation because the other word was too honest. "I keep going," he said, his voice quieter than the room. "Because the work is not a sympathy project. It's a truth project." She nodded. "I'll remind you," she said. "If you need it." He would. He knew he would. By midweek, the first reopened investigation from Q2 produced what everyone knew and no one had been willing to say in writing. North Point's regional manager had massaged numbers and lives to please a spreadsheet. The old habit would have been to accept his resignation and wish him well in a 3-sentence note no one believed. Michael wrote, "We fired him for retaliation and falsifying reports. If you have questions about what this means for you, call this number." Not HR. Me. The line rang for 3 hours. He didn't get through them all. He didn't pretend he could. He handed calls off to people who had earned the right to carry his voice and said, "Use your own. Tell them what you can. Promise only what we can do." He slept badly and well at the same time. On Thursday, the Arcadia client flew in, full of the cheerful menace that big customers wield when they want you to feel small. They were led by a woman who warmed rooms by default and chilled them when necessary. She asked, "Are we late?" "Yes," Michael said. "Why?" she asked. "Because we paused a site that was unsafe," he said. "We're paying people while we fix it. If we need to move your date, we'll cover the difference you incur. If you want to move your business, we'll help transition. If you stay, we'll deserve it." She stared at him for 3 long seconds. "I've had a week," she said. "Don't make me cry." He didn't. She did anyway. Then she cleared her throat and said, "I won't," he said. "And if I do, I'll tell you before you find out." She nodded. "That's new," she said, refreshingly. "Like you." Friday came with a small thing that wasn't small at all. The hotline team sent a note that said, "2 calls today thanked us for calling them back." He read it twice, then wrote back, "That's the metric." He was in the lobby again when the week closed, just to see if the marble sounded different. It did. Buildings learn people, just like people learn buildings. Security waved. The janitor lifted 2 fingers without stopping his slow dance with the buffer. Michael stood where a child had stood and where he had been made to stop one morning by a letter that wouldn't let him walk past himself. Emily arrived with a drawing 3 stick figures again, this time with a 4th standing just behind them, a little cluster of dots and a curved line. "That's the people," she said. "They're near us, even when we forget." He put the drawing on the conference room whiteboard, taped with blue painter's tape like something mid-construction. Anna followed, steady, braver than the building. She sat and listened as he told her the week, not as a report, but as a list of interruptions he had chosen to welcome. "You look different," she said when he finished, and for a second his pride tried to sit up and wag its tail. She saw it. She smiled. "Not better. Not worse. Closer." "To what?" he asked. "To yourself," she said. He exhaled, and in the space that opened, he let himself say the sentence he had been afraid of because it sounded like tempting fate. "I want you to see this through," he said. She nodded. "So do I," she said. "But if I can't, your job is the same." "I know," he said. "Decide something every day that costs me comfort, not someone else's rent. And love without spectacle," she added. That one's not on Emily's list because it's on every page. He laughed. It landed somewhere between a promise and a prayer. By the time the sun dropped between buildings like a coin sliding into a slot, he had one more choice to make, and it wasn't about a policy. It was about the thing he had been avoiding because it required surrender, the public moment. Not a press conference, a town hall. He booked the largest room they had, turned off the stage lights, and stood on the floor. He sent one email. If you can come, come. If you're tired, come sitting down. If you're angry, come anyway. They came, some out of curiosity, some out of loyalty, some out of hunger for a story that didn't insult them. He didn't open with a speech. He opened with, "What do you want to ask me that you think I won't answer?" A hand shot up. "Are you doing this because of a child?" A man asked, trying to be unkind and failing because the room had too much witness in it. "Yes," Michael said. "And because of who I was before the child handed me a letter. And because of who I want to be after she doesn't need to hand me letters anymore." Another hand. "Will we lose our jobs?" "Some of us might," he said. "Not because we told the truth, because we didn't. If your job depends on hiding harm, you are in the wrong story." A third hand, shaking. "Will you protect us if we say what we're scared to say?" "I will try," he said. "When I fail, I will say so out loud and fix it as fast as I can. I can't promise safety in a world that punishes courage. I can promise not to be the one doing the punishing." He answered for an hour. He didn't win the room. Rooms aren't won. Rooms are honored. When it ended, people didn't clap. Some came forward, one by one, like to an altar that had nothing to do with religion and everything to do with witness. He stood there and let them. When the last person left, he turned to see Emily asleep on a chair, her backpack under her head, her breathing, the metronome that keeps time in a story like this. Anna sat next to her, eyes closed, a hand on her daughter's back, not to hold her down, but to keep her near. Michael turned off the lights and whispered to the dark, "Tomorrow." The dark believed him. The last meeting wasn't on a calendar. It was a Tuesday with rain tracing the windows like slow handwriting. Michael stood in the small conference room, no stage lights, just the board, the letter in his pocket, and two chairs. Anna took one. She looked like someone who had learned to make peace with pain without bowing to it. Emily sat on the floor with markers and drew another set of stick figures, this time with a line running through all their hands like a river. "I won't be able to come in for a while," Anna said, not dramatic, not brave, just true. "You don't need me to finish this." "I wanted you to see what you started," Michael replied. "I did," she said. "Now you finish it because it's right, not because I asked." He said, "Jin," and he turning his to that this is dumb. He took a breath he had learned to take past pride, past panic, into the quiet where decisions live. "I will." They went once more to Del Sol. Training wasn't theater anymore. It looked like attention. The supervisor who had threatened workers was gone. The write-up had been reversed. The safety board had photos of real people, not stock images. Raina met them with a nod. "Rent on time again," she said. "I bought my kid a helmet without choosing between that and groceries." Suri texted a photo of a schedule that finally matched the policy. "It took too long," the message read. "Thank you for not pretending it didn't. Iwan was so and Wan Odam." At North Point, the new manager posted the hotline number at eye level in the break corner and added a name under it. "Ask for Marcus." People started using his name. It changed the temperature. That night, Michael walked to the hospital with a paper bag of mediocre cookies and excellent intention. He found Anna in a room that hummed softly. Emily was asleep in a chair again, heartbeat steady against the armrest. The letter lay on the table by the window, folded along the same traveling seams. "I wanted to say sorry," he began, the old reflex. "Say thank you," Anna corrected, smiling. "And keep choosing the true thing when nobody claps." "Thank you," he said, "for interrupting me. And Karyakar." She looked at him a long moment, as if memorizing a face for a test she wouldn't have to take. "Do one thing, quietly," she said. Today, he did. On the way out, he stopped by the oncology desk, signed the corporate match forms to zero out 3 families' unpaid balances, and left without leaving his last name. He walked home in the rain and thought of Emily's empty line, the one only he could write. Weeks turned the work from a story into a habit. Surprise audits got boring, which is a compliment. Payments arrived when they should, and the emails about them became fewer because reliability doesn't need applause. The hotline learned to call back with names. Legal wrote the non-retaliation policy in words a person could explain to their mother. 2 managers left because courage had become the currency. 3 stayed and learned the exchange rate. The dashboard the CFO built was ugly and honest. Investors argued and then adjusted. The Arcadia rollout landed late and intact. A year didn't pass. It didn't need to, for the shape to hold. One afternoon, Emily wheeled a whiteboard into his office and erased the last line of her list. "It's time for a new last one," she announced. "Mom says the ending is just the place where the work gets quiet. Sen." He held the marker, felt the tug toward performance, and wrote anyway. "Keep the door open for the next interruption." Emily read it and added a tiny heart in the margin, not decoration notation. The town hall that followed wasn't a victory lap. It was a status check where status didn't matter. Michael stood on the floor again. "2 things," he said. "First, if we're doing this because of a letter, we'll stop when letters stop. We're doing this because it's who we are. Second, if you think I'm drifting, pull me back. You have my permission. Use it." A hand lifted. "Will this cost us?" someone asked. "Yes," he said, "but not as much as pretending." They didn't clap. They went back to work with a little more air in the room. On a quiet morning that smelled like rain deciding whether to fall, the assistant stepped in with the expression of someone carrying news that changes a day without changing the work. Michael closed his eyes, opened them, and nodded. He walked to the small conference room and sat with the empty chair as if it were still occupied. He placed the letter on the table, unfolded it one more time, and let the city drift behind the glass. He didn't make a speech. He made a phone call to Del Sol to check a training schedule. He forwarded a resume from a teenager named Liza to an engineer who liked mentoring more than meetings. He wrote a note to Suri that said, "You changed us." He signed 3 payment exceptions. He stood in the lobby and watched the revolving doors spin like a clock that refuses to make time faster for anyone. That evening, he walked to the park with the bench for a man someone loved. Daniel was there with 2 coffees. They sat without filling the air. "She'd like that it's quieter now," Michael said. "She'd like that it's real," Daniel answered. They watched a kid wobble on a bicycle and refuse to quit, a parent jogging behind whispering the only 2 words that ever matter: "Keep going." A year later, because some promises deserved time, Michael let the producer turn on a camera. No stage. No script. He told the truth in sentences that had learned to breathe. "We were softer where we needed to be steel. We were steel where we needed to be human. We're still correcting. We'll never be done." He held up a folded page without reading from it. "A letter interrupted me," he said. "I decided not to get over it." He ended where he should have begun. "Decide something today you'll be proud of if no one knows." After the lights, he walked downstairs. The marble sounded like it had learned a second language. Emily waited by the door, taller, still carrying a backpack that held too much and exactly enough. She handed him the list. "New last line?" she asked. He didn't take the marker. He handed it back. "Your turn," he said. She wrote, "Love without spectacle. Repair in public. Keep a hand free." He taped the paper to the whiteboard with the blue painter's tape that had become their ritual. Then he opened the door for the next interruption and felt the building breathe like a chest that had remembered how. The story didn't end, it held. And in the holding, it changed what the word leader meant in a lobby built for power and repurposed for care.